I've spent a few years of my childhood in Brazil because my mother was from Brazil and my dad took this job for the State Department. And this is, my mom's first language was Portuguese. And this is about the relationship. We're also raised by another woman. Red fingernails. Briefly, I dwelt upon my mother's tongue. They put up a swing set in the lobby where we liked to swing. Red fingernails. The polish had been an intoxicant. Rubber trees spoke with red lips. Talking with the spirits then didn't seem all that necessary. President Kubitschek is doing his best to welcome the post-colonial companies. My mother rejoins her first language so she can live, and in making numbers, I developed a love of the partially hollow. The other mother tried to give us her body, painting our fingernails in the kitchen. It was like growing sunsets. During this time, we rarely spoke English. We understood because of what they didn't say. What happened is not how we should measure things. Joy exists because there are delays, those intervals in bodies where two languages mix before the first one has to be lifted away. And also about motherhood. This is in Cascadia, and it's called shared custody, and it came from thinking about the process of sharing a child with another parent, and also literary traditions, and also, you know, the way the versions of reality get imposed on you, and how, you know, it really is a matter of kind of always deconstructing that to see what reality is. Shared custody. A singularity is just like a black hole. I'd been reading Hawking when I was writing Loose Sugar, and I just couldn't make sense of Hawking. Shared custody. An example often used to show is X falling feet first into a singularity with a watch on. Fate is what happens backward. With regard to Persephone, the seasons don't change till something agrees to her sacrifice. When a child is dropped off in front of the other parent's house, she creates a history of space in yellow, hurrying in the unopposed direction, as we learn to read by hurrying meaning. She got out of the car, smelled threads of Johnson's baby shampoo. Redolence exists by itself as opportunity. The end of the Cold War had come. In Russia, more oranges, lizard baskets of capitalism. I tried to talk to her father. He tried to talk to me. As X falls by prearrangement with the experimenters, yellow is unopposed. The child, leaving the car, drops an alphabet on the path. Y-E-L, shaving of yellow, central plaid, black from a fraction if she has been brave about including the math. She hated her little bag. A Thursday humming followed. My writing was falling apart. She was learning to read. A fate begins to be assembled when the linear is shared. All it does doesn't work. Should dirt not praise her efforts? Little pointed arrows swerve around from the mother's perspective, vanishing skirt. Flashes of letters here, here. Home is the fear of sighs. A word can fall apart. Y-E. We sat in the car. Tiny bats between Berkeley W'd the air. The lip of a singularity is an event too far beyond, good corduroy with its highs and lows, as the star dissolves in the just having spun, and you're not supposed to ask how X feels as he falls in. Persephone practices her yes, her no, her this, that, and the other. The child, approaching the house of the father in motion of minutes, free for 20 yards of both of them, makes a roof with her goodbye. Bye, Mom. They'll have to invent new seasons to explain it. A daughter grows her horizon, somehow a line by which a life could be pursued. When she started to read, I no longer heard language. It heard me. I had the stupid idea that she should dress up to leave. X should have checked with Persephone about the kicking and screaming. I should have checked with the mother, but I was the mother. Backward should try to fix loss so it is not devastation but chronicle. Panic plaid, almost at his door. I cannot see what flowers are. Daffodils, Dirt's birthday candles. California is medium old. X won't be very young when he gets to the center, nor will the child, testifying to cloth, dropped, sent back fractal, active as the buoys on the bay, nor is the child very young. If you are time, you think in terms of next. If you are Persephone, you think in terms of dirt. If you're the metaphor, you'll let the thing stand for it. On Monday, the flash of a dove, your hoping frame. The child can look back, the myths don't apply here. If you think one joy was sacrificed, it's because you said it. What choice did it have when the thing undid but to call her in broken colors? And one of the projects for this book was to try to get a lot of geologic history. It's sort of a geotheology, a feminist geotheology. And I was trying to get a lot of time into, 24-line structures a lot. So there's a series of poems in here where a lot of geology occurs in these 24 lines, and they're sort of bands of rock, kind of like the lines of the poems are rock. Formation of soils. Caliban, the word Caliban occurs in here. It's, of course, the character from Shakespeare, but it's also my car. So that's what that's about. The formation of soils. For 40 million years, a warm, warm rain. Then the sea got up to try to relax. Vulnerable volcanoes had just melted away. He worked below, translating the author's imps and downs, his ups and demons. Pines grew skyward, though the pines were not. Thus began long episodes of quiet, nickel laterites not ready for the slots. It took periods of soft showers attacking the dream under the silt-covered sun, Osiris washing his fragments, Leda swimming with her vagabonds. Everyone is made essentially the same way. Through notebooks of tight red dirt, Franciscans walked upside down under us, aluminum oxides, incidents of magma, and I had to go down in the earth for something. Iron sediments spread over foothills where Caliban had his flat. I was wearing the brown sweater when we spoke, my heart and the one below translating his heart out. But by that time, what? Experience had been sent up at an angle. And probably you all know, but the structure of rock under Berkeley is called the Franciscan Complex. It's the granite under Berkeley. And I teach at a Catholic school, so this was really resonant for me when I found this out. Franciscan Complex. And Whole Foods in here refers to Whole Foods. Each day the job gets up and rubs its eyes. We are going to live on in dry amazement. Workers push the granite bed under the avenue, bed of the married, the pre-married, making a form as forms become infinite, the scraping is scraping, gray whack, chert. People wait for their bumpy little pizzas, theory of theories in gravity voices. Melpomene, goddess of tragedy, bathes, mostly the bride, never the bridesmaid. Angel food and Whole Foods. Consider Tanguy, whose lunar responses to childhood made everything a horizon. Those walking upside down don't know what to think. The finch engineering itself to deep spring, or you, life, tired of being cured. How many layers of giving up are there? One of it, two of it, everything in the ark you save. Well, since we're about to go to war, I thought I'd read a poem from the last Gulf War. It's about Chevron tankers, and it comes from a sort of hallucinatory experience of looking at the tankers going past. I have a picture window that sees the bay partially, and thinking about the tankers going back and forth every day as a sort of dreamscape, nightmarish. And there's, in this poem, it's in little fragments, sentence fragments, and there's an image of an admiral that comes up from below. If occasionally only several on the horizon, one drags the absence of being. When halfway across the window the jagged one has stopped this nervousness that won't continue. Where is below in them, or is the oil confined such that it won't continue? The ensign comes up from the boiler room. I'd like to see the admiral, I say. Chevron dragging these scattered opals across the bay. They don't intend to, but not intending is the brutality that could enfold you. Some of the tankers seem to have guns on your birthday. The ensign comes up from the boiler room. I'm sorry, he says, the admiral can't see you. Parts of it made no sense, but neither did Chevron. Absence of being with hooks on its forehead. Oil slopping underneath in sections, as reality must have sections which could damage birds. And vats of weak color you could look down into. The ensign comes up from the boiler room. I'm sorry, the admiral misinformed you. What would you want to eat after they had sailed reasonably over the pink starfish who gossip? If you use it, fear it. Oil which once was opal beauty under the ice with a war which got into the wings of birds. Past sailboats to the hooks on their foreheads, the D's and F's on their foreheads. If you use it, I thought when I was thinking about Enron in the spring that that the numbers needed to be remade. And so, because of the mess, and so I started writing some poems about the numbers to try to remake the numbers, and I'm going to read two of them. This is called, they're also in 24 lines, Enron Executives Take the Fifth. In the Senate, square-headeder men than yesterday call on the number 5 for help. On law, the perfect length which feels its fear being used up. As the executives take the fifth, the oxygen in the cup of the 5 gets formal, crisp, to support the tilt when the number turns on its back, oop, like that, before being hooked on the verge ledge of the planet. The 5 fears being next to their zeros, their one-inflected zeros, face masks, all air zeros, zeros choked air, all choked air zeros, as if from belted slugs circling choked round the glittering waste of the world. And this one is called Ethical 6. It's got 6s all over the page. Now with our tiny, tinny song, it's time to save the number 6, which can be done mystically through air, perhaps by calling Pythagoras on the cell phone. Problem is how to do it without using Enron numbers. Well, set the first 6 on the radical unknown dedicated to the universal analog. Start to phone the 6th grade boy with his homemade crying. Go down to the scrunch 6 of a Berkeley snail. Ethics crawls inside its hoopla, an ethics that precedes existence. A mighty water not tricked, thus saving rivers. Shaman 6, its chamber writhing, its barrel filled. So I have 3 started, but it's harder to save a 3 for some reason. I'm going to read a poem that has a lot of autumn moon imagery in here. This poem was written kind of instead of another poem. I was trying to work on a poem about a brutality, and I couldn't. And so I worked on these quatrains about the moon, which I sort of think is a good thing to do when you can't write about one thing. You start another project, and the thing that you're trying to do gets in anyway. I'm not going to read this poem in its entirety, just some of the sections. Autumn moon. The moon comes up in her secondness, left edge not filled in quite, the abject not filled in quite, but trying. The infinitely being called, then not chosen, also the fear of being surpassed, cast off, not needed. She said it helps to know Van Gogh with his obsession for yellow. Haiku in translation, it would be like this: autumn moon, some wine stains on white linen, his separate past. Through the tic-tac-toe of the steel window grid, the start of one gold O, then the game is given up. Some heavy, hopeful woolen clouds over it, no use, the Democratic Party. And kept on working hard on this instead of the one about the father who was, of course, the son. Female creativity avoiding the issue of talking about the father who was, of course, the son. Halloween, with your tiny one, you stand on the curbside, beam the flashlight up to its tin cathedrals. The desire to be understood, though being understood was not what you meant. A rich word used in conversation, inveigled, swells as you use it through the days. Calcium, bufferin, halcyon, aspirin. So why every month the white expansion, that tyrant drop of estrogen? Then in your dark corner of heaven, to learn the beauty of your life, you had to leave something out. 3/4 gone in the faded sky, his Levi's button just unbuttoned. Ordered within an incompleteness, the cut tip of a scallion. Women poets don't have worldviews, said the male poet. Hard, isn't it? Almost full again. If you press gently at the edges, at the dark spots in the poem, it may spring open. Bob and I just lost a friend who's very dear to us, Carol Milosh, and Czeslaw Milosh's wife, and I thought I'd just read a couple of the little short death tractates in her memory. Reverse seeing. A fox ran across your path, pure totem. You would never see it again. Likewise, the loved one. You stared hard into the rusty aftermath. But things kept coming through the panel of death. Doves took off outside the window, click, 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 click. Gosh, their wings needed oiling. Then no more them. You want to be like your dead friend? You are like her. Riding is dying. But the war was not about borders, it was about surrender. Finding her. The mind asks the question, the heart is hurt by the unknown. You didn't have to take care of the dead one, for she could still love what came forth, though it seemed to you like suffering. Too hard for you? Listen, you don't have to do anything. The raccoon is in the garbage can, selecting an eggshell. There's a patch of moonlight on the rug. Get up, stand in it. Be seen through. And out in the night, where the ragged patches converge, everything that lets go still has its memory of attachment, and that which refused to let go still has its uses. I'm going to read 3 more poems. This is a really, really old one. As I said, I'm going to kind of read backward, and this is the oldest one. It's written more than 20 years ago. And it is, it's, I think, pretty self-explanatory. It's written kind of with a maybe more specific subjectivity than the poems that I was talking about at the beginning, the sort of lyric, social lyric idea of going through the day. And this, let's see, has nothing in it I should explain. It's from Fortress, A Life of Action. Gray this morning, pigeon gray, governess gray, not military. Wake hungover from last night's lecture. The couple spoke of war, their faces glowing slightly. 2 women sat behind me, holding hands. I had forgotten what this was like, said one. How beautiful your hands are, said the other. The child coughs all night. I give her orange syrup that sticks to her hair, then look out at the coins of leaves and lamplight on the stubbled street, and sit within the gray of not deciding how to use the time, the gray between decision and the first step. Think of E already up, jogging. Summon courage like a moving van. Better to have lived a life of action like the woman said. Better to have waved from trains at the bourgeoisie instead of thinking with this mottled gull of irony above my head. Better to have cured the fatal contagion or smuggled the letter than to sit like a sparrow among sparrows trying to focus on a shaft of motes. Well, begin the list for Thanksgiving. Begin the errands in the brain, the small temporal negotiations. Go down to Young's. Start tossing things into the wire basket. Tell Jean happy holidays, holding the pear in one hand, the yam in the other. It is gray with a simple point at both ends like a story. I love the way she lifts the clear sack onto the scales, chatting as she presses the buttons of the register. It rings behind the suit of armor. Good cheer, and things slide on the belt like days on the calendar. Bags of hard berries, blossoms, and herbs. The bird with its ankles clamped, the chilly, plucked skin. The cave to hold the bright, good-for-you parsley, the crumpled bread. Outside in the drizzle, the woman will ease her baby into the car seat, pushing its stomach to hitch the straps over the flesh. Who will reward her infinite weariness? Who will glorify her? I will, says the housewife Rain. I will, says the comrade Sparrow. And one more poem from Berlin. As I said, I was really trying to do this sort of spiritual journey around the Benjamin letters, and he had many different addresses in Berlin, and I sort of tried to go to each of them and kind of experience the corner air and some of these spots. And one of his streets he wrote of in the Berlin Chronicle inspired in him this sort of particular childhood dread that seemed very fertile to him, and he wrote about it very eloquently. And so this is about that street, but also about the condition. It's called On Karmerstrasse. Beneath balustrades selected against your going, a breezen day anticipates a dread. Then the walk into each word is infinite and navigates a stumble under the porticos at childhood's edge, where half-meant sentences assemble in bombed or not bombed corners, and you, stumbling block for the poem near the compound diplomat's swanlit canals day from a bottle where bears hold hands. Whether or not you want to live involves negotiating with the drama of class shadow. Now a trance has been cast over the world, but which, from a chained bench, the soul turns to its example. I was asked by a couple people to read some poems, and I guess I'm not going to get to them because I don't want to hold people up who have class. So I'm just going to read one more poem, and the people who asked me to read the poems that I'm not reading, I'll read them the next time. I'm sorry. So this is called The Spark, and it is a poem in which, again, I was sort of trying to, this is ending with fire, which we know the world may end with, but this is about the beginning of the world instead. And it was trying to get a particular kind of Yeatsian quality of language into a very specific personal experience and make it a larger, perhaps contextualizing a lot of the experience of people of my generation, which, or maybe all generations, where the body comes into being through your sexuality. The Spark. And thanks for being a great attentive audience. Appreciate it. The Spark. Once you were immortal in the flame. You were not the fire, but you were in the fire. Nothing moved except the way it was already moving. Nothing spoke except the voice in back of time. And when you became your life, there were those who couldn't, those who tried to love you and failed, and some who had loved you in the beginning with the first sexual energy of the world. Start the memory now, you who let your life be invented, though not being invented had been more available, and remember those who lit the abyss, the boys in science fair. You were probably hall monitor at that time, weren't you? And you admired them. On their generator, the spark bounced back and forth like baby lightning, and you saw them run their fingertips through its danger. Two promising loops stuck up to provide a home for the sexual light, which was always loose when it wasn't broken. Free joy that didn't go anywhere, but moved between the wires like a piece of living in advance. Then later, how much were you supposed to share? The boys sat in front of your house at dusk, the ones who still had parents. Sometimes they held Marlboros out the car windows, and even if they didn't, sparks fell from their hands. Showers of sparks between 1968, and the hands were sleek with asking. They had those long intramural after the library type fingers they would later put in you. When? Well, when they had talked you into having a body they could ask into the depths of, and they rose to meet you against an ignorance that made you perfect, and you rose to meet them like a waitress of fire. Because didn't the spark shine best in the bodies under the mild shooting stars on the back-and-forth blanket from the father's cars? They lay down with you, and when did you start missing them? As Sacramento missed its yellow dust, 1852. When did you start missing those who invented your body with their sparks? They didn't mind being plural. They put their summer stars inside of you. How nice to have, and then the pretty soon you were a body, space, warm flesh, warm this under the summer meteors that fell like lowercase eyes above the cave of granite where the white owl slept without because or why that first evening of the world. The sparks of your bodies joined the loud sparks of the sky, and you carried it, a little flame, into almost famous cities between the ringing of shallow bells, pretty much like some of that blue tile work, walking the bridge of sighs until you found the spark on quilted bedspreads in small villages, as if the not-mattering stitching coming all undone in the middle stood for a decade. You barely burned then. Sex grows rather dim sometimes, doesn't it? But it comes back. Yourself half gone into those rooms, yourself, a stranger. You who happened only once, remember yourself as you are. When he comes to you in the revolving dusk, his full self lighting candles, a little smoke he sings the fire you already own so you can stop not letting him. All love is representative of the beginning of time. When you are loved, the darkness carries you. When you are loved, you are golden. Thank you.